Hi, guys. Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. It's Friday. It's the 28th of June. It is 8 p.m. UK time, and it's time for another episode of the Gin and Tonic Show. Today, things are a little bit different because you asked, we listen. You said, let us not get too many crazy comments. Let's not do too much reading of the Quran. Let's get a change. Let's do something different. Well, today we're going to do something different. In the chat, you can see a link to a book. And this book is The Curse of Gods. And lo and behold, we have the author here with us. Welcome, Harris Sultan.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me again. It's been a while since we last spoke. Yeah, very, very happy and excited to be on.
Excellent stuff. Thanks for taking time to come and join us here. We've got Rob and we've got Thunderous. Rob was a little bit late. That's why I had to start this. That's why I'm doing the intro and everything. I'm not going to do the normal stuff. We're not going to do any of the normal stuff, I think, unless somebody like screams for it. I just want to say it's the Gin and Tonic Show. We don't attack Muslims. We differentiate between Islam, the ideology, and the people. So we don't attack, we just criticize the bad ideas that we find in Islam. And I think we're not going to stop today. What we have found over the years is that there are lots of reasons why Muslims should leave Islam. It's just very difficult. And I think this is something that we're going to hear from Harris today. And the way that he has written his book, I think, is extremely valuable because it's not just the usual thing that you hear, this is Islam and here's what you need to do. And this is this. No, this is very personal. This is giving people an insight into his life, into what it was like. And there are a couple of things that I really loved about this book, and this is why I have absolutely no problem advertising this. And you have the link there to Amazon. So if you don't go and buy his book, you're going to get 80 lashes. That's it. That's the way that it works. There is nothing else that you deserve for this. But there's a lot of things that I love because you are incredibly structured in your approach. All right, what you do is you say, okay, like right off the bat, I'm going to give you two options. Option A is if you want to continue being deluded, fine, go ahead and do it. But if you value honesty, integrity, ethics, anything like that makes you authentic as a person, then choose option B. And then throughout the book, you go and you reference A and B. You go through the book every single time and say, look, you have two options. Even here for this idea, which is I think is a bad idea, you still have the same two options. What made you do that? What brought you to this, to launch into this structure and to maintain it all the way through the book?
I think that's pretty much, I think it happened to me, and over my years, as I've spoken with other believers as well, and I've always seen that people always come around these two at the crossroads where you can look at it critically, and then you can ask yourself whether whatever is being told is right or wrong, or you can make excuses, or you can make justifications, or you can try to find different interpretations just to satisfy your existing worldview. And I think we run into that, and that's a daily struggle whenever we see a debate between two opposing rivals, presidential candidates, or in politics or even in sports. One is advocating one player and promoting his strengths and the weaknesses, etc. And then we can always look around it. But most of the time, there is an objective truth. I don't deny the subjectivity, and it is important to acknowledge when we run into subjective things. But we always run into, especially with the scriptures, we can run into objectivity. Now, I was just speaking with someone. He's very knowledgeable, had a solid rationale in his mind for his justification for Islam and the existence of God. Even though he was a bit shaky on the existence of God, he would acknowledge that, yes, we do get into trouble when we can't say whether there's infinite regress, or whether there is something as infinite or not, or there is a designer behind everything. So he would acknowledge that. But when it comes to the scripture, to me, when I look at it, and I gave him a specific example of there are 11 verses that mention day and night, and in the same sentence, in the same verse, the author of the Quran mentions the orbit of sun and moon. Now, even before I had read anyone say it, in my own mind, I knew that they would say, well, sun does have an orbit around the Milky Way galaxy, but what does that has to do with the orbit of with day and night? Obviously, it's got nothing to do with it. But you have a choice now. You can delude yourself and you can say, no, it is specifically talking about the orbit around the Milky Way galaxy. But you're failing to acknowledge, or you're failing to respond or give any further clarification that what does that has to do with the day and night. So I think that's just one example, and there's so many other examples. And the person said, well, I would have been more worried if the Quran had said the sun doesn't have an orbit. I said, no, you wouldn't. You would actually say in that case, well, obviously sun doesn't have an orbit when it comes to day and night. I mean, in reference to day and night, sun is stationary. Day and night are not caused by the sun's orbit. So I think people always have a choice to either be firm and acknowledge the problems that we see, or we can go with our confirmation bias. We can go with it, no, it must have meant that, or it could have meant that, just to fit your existing worldview. And I think it needs a lot of courage to be able to change your worldview. I mean, I only wrote this book, I started probably Jan or February last year, and then it was published by December. I have already changed my view on certain things what I've already written in the book. I'm not going to go back and change.
Jesus, don't I know that? Yes.
And that's the funny thing. I take immense pride in the fact that I can, whenever I've been slapped with an alternative view, with facts that go against my existing worldview, I can change that, and I take immense pride in that. But unfortunately, religious people, faith is virtue. More blindly you believe, more points you get in the court of God. So I think that's where I have a problem with those people, and I want to promote that thinking, that you have a choice to believe or to disbelieve, and not on emotional grounds, but on the information at hand. We could all be wrong about everything, but we got to go by what we know, and what makes sense, basically.
But then you did at some stage believe this. What made you believe that?
Again, it's a confirmation bias. I mean, you live in a society where it is easier to remain a Muslim. I mean, this is why I have immense respect for atheists living in Muslim countries, that they can enjoy all the luxuries of life, especially if you're a man. You can enjoy all the luxuries of life. You can enjoy a privileged status in the society if you just act like a Muslim. If you just say, I believe in God and Prophet, and every now and then occasionally bring in mashallah and subhanallah, inshallah, those kind of words, despite of the fact that you can do all the other dodgy things that Islam prohibits, for example, just having alcohol or having premarital sex and all that, you could do all of that, you can still enjoy it, and even legally you can enjoy it. You can have multiple wives. If we were living 200 years ago, you could have multiple sex slaves, etc. So as a man, it's easy for you to remain a Muslim in a Muslim society, even as a hypocrite Muslim. It just doesn't matter. But it needs a lot of courage to look into the alternative ideas and say, you know what, I don't buy it. To me, I was obviously, throughout my teenage years, I was going through that journey where I just couldn't make sense out of things. And I was doing a lot of childish things, God, show me a sign, just make the light flicker a little bit, make me itch over my left shoulder, and then I'll think. And the confirmation bias is so strong that if I'm thinking about, if I'm waiting for that itch, waiting to get that itch on my left shoulder, so firmly I'm thinking about it, and then I would actually feel like scratching my left shoulder. So confirmation bias it's an amazing phenomenon in human psychology that we just keep falling for it. So, but eventually, like more you look into the scripture, I just say, forget about the religious thought that comes out of it. Forget about other tafsirs that come out of it, the commentaries that come out of it, or the other literature that comes out of it, that people can now, modern Muslims can now refute that and say, well, it was written 200 years after. So if it tells you, that Prophet told you to drink camel urine and that will cure your stomach pain, then you can discard that hadith and say, well, that probably wasn't true. But the actual scripture, if your firm belief is that the Quran is a literal word of God and is untouched and unchanged, even within that, you can see a lot of problems with that. And that's why I just focus on Muhammad's life and the Quran itself, without even going into hadiths and the fiqh and the religious thought that comes out of all the corresponding literature. There's still plenty of material for us to make up our minds that it doesn't seem like the work that of the creator of the entire universe. It's just so big.
Right. How old were you when you started asking these questions?
Well, probably about 8, 9 or 10 when I asked my mom, who created God? It's like, and now at that point, I thought, I'm some sort of a genius for thinking that. But every atheist I speak with, that usually is the fundamental question. And that shows that a 9-year-old child can also think such a basic, simple question. Some other atheists I've spoken to who say, well, that they thought that, well, if incest is so wrong, why did God make Adam and Eve who could only have sex with their brothers and sisters? So these are basic questions, and even a child can ask those questions. And unfortunately, the religious theology just doesn't give us those answers. It just doesn't have those answers. And then you look into the ontological ontological argument and the cosmological arguments and all of those arguments. You look at it, you're not the first one. People have been trying to answer these questions for thousands of years, and they just cannot come up with. And I understand that since we haven't been able to come up with anything concrete yet, it does leave a room for a believer to keep believing in that. I was speaking to this A-list movie star, Pakistani megastar, and that just summed it up all for me. He said, when I look at the complexity of DNA, I believe something which is a building block of life, I see there must be a designer behind it. And I said, well, when I look at the simplicity of DNA and then the evolving complexity of it, obviously, if DNA is definitely simpler as compared to the entire human body, because you've got billions of DNA, you've got trillions, billions of cells, and so many other complexities that arrive. Obviously, DNA is simpler than an entire living organism. I see simplicity in DNA, and then I see the natural processes that give rise to it, such as through evolution. That makes more sense to me. So, in that case, I don't think it's a case of there's a grand designer behind it, because it's simple. But he sees the complexity, and he believes there must be a grand designer. So I think it just leaves a room, and I don't know. I really can't work it out, that how really smart people can still fall for any religious belief. So yeah, I was young, and then again I went through back and forth, and I was discouraged to think about it. And then I went through a phase when I became truly religious, and I wanted to live like a good religious man, a person who abides by all the commandments of his creator. And then, eventually it just ran out of steam for me.
Was there any argument, or was there anything that sort of intrigued you, or was there anything that you said, wow, this is a great thing in Islam?
Again, it goes to confirmation bias. I mean, when you look at how adultery, for instance, is not encouraged in Islam, and then you say, you know what, that's fine. I mean, I don't want my sister to be having all these sexual relationships with all these men, and then you have God on your side who agrees with you. Then that makes sense to you. They go, yeah, it's a good thing. But then when you go further into it, then you go, okay, well, what is it about? But what is so special about sex that two people do whatever they do? How is that your business? So again, it just goes down to all your way of thinking, how that makes sense to you. Incest is another one. That, okay, what reason do I have to tell the world that it's not okay for you to sleep with your mother or father or sister or whatever? And you can draw a direct line from your religion, as opposed to coming independently with arguments for or against something. it's again, it just goes down to the lack of understanding of the opposing ideas. But more you learn about these things, more you explore these things, more superficial and simple religious ideas seem. And I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it, even though I think we should always be coming up with better ideas, better words to communicate with believers, that there's nothing good that exclusively comes out of Islam. Absolutely nothing good that comes exclusively out of Islam. You could say that, okay, Islam encourages good relationship with your parents. Islam encourages good relationship with your neighbor, which is the same in Christianity as well. So there are a lot of good things that come out of Islam, but nothing exclusively comes out of Islam. We could have arrived at it. We did arrive at those conclusions without religion. So why do we need religion in the first place?
Exactly. Okay, if you see Islam the way that I see it, as like a curtain, so it's there is this thing, but it's not really solid. It's very flexible. Every little breeze will shake it. If you blow against it, it will move. But if you peek behind it, you see that it's just a facade, and you see all the ugly stuff behind it. What kind of advice would you give to someone else to take the road that you took, to go and actually have the courage to peek behind the curtain? Because what I hear from you all the time is it's confirmation bias, and it is. And this is the problem, that you are being indoctrinated with this, that you have this confirmation bias. How do you get over this? How do you develop this initial spark of critical thinking to peek behind the curtain?
Well, see, this is if you had spoken to me a few weeks ago, I would have said that there's a simpler process behind it, but I have evolved from it, because I've engaged in conversation with some very learned and very intelligent people who are fully aware of the atheistic arguments, yet they're not convinced by it, and they remain believers. Now, to me, it always seemed like an enigma that once you are exposed to the atheistic arguments, it's almost impossible to remain a God believer, let alone being a particular religion believer. But what is it that some of the smartest people on earth still can't go past their religiosity? It's one thing to believe in a vague God, that, okay, there could be, there could not be, I don't know. But then there's quite a big jump to go from that God to your favorite religion of your birth. There's always a coincidence that it always ends up being the religion of your parents. And all the other 10,000 religions turn out to be just wrong, and they don't apply the same critical thinking on their own religion that they apply on the conflicting one. For example, if you very learned Muslim, if you told him, hey, Jesus is the Son of God, Christians believe, they just find out, how can it be? Fair enough. But they don't apply the same logic when they go to the other absurd ideas than Islam. Muhammad ascending to heaven, for instance, either on the donkey or just through some magical carpet or whatever. They don't question that, or moon being split into two. They don't apply the same critical thinking that they apply on, let's say, evolution, for instance. It just goes back to the confirmation bias, because they've been raised with that belief that it's going to be true. So my advice is, again, I'm becoming less and less interested. I know I've written a book telling people why I left Islam when nobody asked me, hey, why did you leave Islam? But with a hope that might make some people atheists. But I'm becoming less and less interested in converting people into atheism, or ditching their religion or something. I'm becoming more and more interested in how that is going, how your religiosity affects my life and those people who share my ideas. For example, again, there are close to possibly 4 million atheists living in Pakistan, but their lives are miserable, and learned believers, moderate Muslims, acknowledge that, and they want to do something about it. But how is your religiosity affecting that? Now, I know you and I would agree that the hardcore believers of Islam would discourage free thinking and atheistic thoughts, and whatever happens, they would try to shut it down. Now, I can challenge and attack those ideas and those people per se, rather than somehow antagonizing people who are moderate Muslims who don't believe in anything that these violent or ISIS or Taliban or this clergy hardcore Islamists believe in. I always wondered why Sam Harris doesn't debate with Majid Nawaz or Dia Khan. He called both of these people his favorite humans on religion, because I think Sam is more interested in that fact that what these people are doing. Are they promoting free thinking? Are they promoting critical thinking? Are they promoting better life, peace, and harmony for free thinkers and atheists in Muslim society? That's what they're promoting. How are they coming to that conclusion? By reading the same Quran that you and I read? I don't know that, but I'm becoming less and less interested in that. Because at the end of the day, if he believes in God and wants to pray 5 times a day and fast in the month of Ramadan, and it doesn't impact me at all in any shape or form, there's no disagreement left between him and me. Because,
but I think,
but in your book, you are very harsh with this guy. I mean, one thing I noticed actually, that you are very honest with yourself, that you say, okay, let me come back to this book, because when I wrote this 3 months ago, the situation was completely different. And yet today, if I see this, let me quickly update this, what I think about this today. So this is something that I like very much, that you say, okay, it's constantly moving. It is not a fixed target. It is a moving thing. So I'm hoping there's going to be the curse of God 2, or the new curse, or the curse of all the gods. But what I noticed
I am
also
working
is
on
that
the
you are
next
very sorry.
I am working on a next book, which is going to evolve into how our society is being affected by religion, and it'll be extension of that.
Exactly, and this is exactly where I'm going, because you say, like, if Trump, Erdogan, or Kim, or whatever would say everyone must vote for them or else, then and I find this is it's an excellent example of what is happening today. Do you think that these examples that you take from reality are going to impact Muslims today, or are you hoping this?
Well, I hope it would. Again, it just goes back to, like, I mean, for example, my thinking has evolved. I spoke with Hassan Radwan, and you might notice that in the book as well. I structured it like this. I said, if you are a pro-homosexual, pro-LGBT, or you're tolerant towards LGBTQ people, you're pro-feminist and pro-human rights, all these kind of good, moderate, enlightened ideas, and you're still a believer, then unfortunately, you're a bad Muslim, because Scripture doesn't want you that way. Conversely, if you are homophobic, anti-women rights, and all these kind of things, then you are a good Muslim, but you're a bad human. Now, that was my categorization of that. And I spoke with Hassan Radwan at length, and I was a big propagator of the idea that, and it's in the book as well, that ISIS is the true Islam, or Taliban is more true Islam than the Islam of, let's say, Majid Nawaz. Majid Nawaz is a Muslim as well. But I've evolved from it, because when religion, and I've become a lot more sympathetic toward the reform question. Islam is so vague. All religions are so vague that it is. You know how they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or God created man in His image. It's actually man created God in His image, and it's man. Whatever a Muslim believes that Islam is, to him, that's all Islam is. To him, that's it. I was speaking with this guy. I said, well, how do you handle hell? And this Muslim told me that, Harris, you're going to go to heaven as well. I said, excuse me? I mean, that's his rationale. There's a rationale behind. And he said, for example, kafir is someone, kafir comes from the word kufr, which means hiding the truth, right? So he said, Harris, if you genuinely believe there's no God, and you're not purposefully hiding the truth, then God is not going to be unhappy with you, and He's not going to put you in hell. Okay, when I look at the scripture, it's in English. You could say you get lost in translation. In English, it uses the word disbeliever, and I don't believe disbelievers of the Quranic verses will go to hell. And he interprets it a totally different way. To him, he has this benign version of Islam. How can I tell him that he's stupid, and especially when he's giving me an olive branch and he's saying, well, you're not going to go to hell, and I want people like you to exist peacefully and flourish in a Muslim society. So that's why my way of thinking has evolved, and Hassan Radwan helped me, or actually convinced me in a way that, yes, there is all the room. ISIS doesn't do anything un-Islamic. There is a way, there's a straight line you can draw from Islamic scripture, and you can justify beheading, amputation of hands and feet at opposite ends, and all of that, and stoning, and all of that. You can do it directly from Islamic scripture. But then there are other types of people. How do we ignore those people who just twist and turn those verses, and in their mind, their rationale is solid? How do we ignore that? I would rather throw my weight and my allegiance to those people who, yes, they still have, you and I would think that's a false narrative, that's a false rationale as per our understanding. But I would rather have those people on my side, because at the end of the day, that is going to result in a better society where everyone can flourish. And this is exactly what's happened. The next step after that is, once we let critical thinking, free thinking society flourish, then religion itself will go extinct. I mean, why is Christianity dying so fast? Because nobody cares, nobody buys those stories anymore, because you can criticize and you can challenge the ideas of Christianity. We need the same thing in the Muslim world. People are still saying, okay, they're very, I'm not talking about Zakir Naik kind of scholars. There are a couple of scholars that I would worry going up against in a debate. And they have this totally benign version. They don't twist and turn in a Zakir Naik fashion where there's absurdity that comes out of it. They twist and turn in a way there's good comes out of it. For example, like the kufr, even atheists will go to heaven. There's room for evolution in the Qur'an as well. So those are smart people, and you and I would say they probably manipulate verses in a certain way. So if that comes out, they can, despite of the fact that they're misinterpreting Qur'an to extract something good out of it, despite of that, despite of the sophistry, despite of their intelligence, people are still not buying it. And people are still eventually moving away from it.
Sultan, I agree with you, actually. And I've spoken to a number of Muslims. Some of them are Sufis. So, of course, they take the Quran entirely subjectively. And I agree with you. I'd rather have them as neighbors and them being inconsistent with their book, or having sort of far out interpretations. I'm totally with you. I think the challenge seems to be, and maybe you can speak on this, is what does will the rest of the Muslim world sort of follow suit? Because it seems to me these people, as we often say, they're better than their book. And so they've had a collision with Western modernity, and they've got these ideas that are, far more progressive than the Quran. And so they want to try and have both work together. So they have to make it subjective. But the challenge, as I say, would be with other Muslims. So what's your view on these sort of Muslims, be it the Sufis or Majid Nawaz or any of these sort of people, or the Imam down in the Australia, I can't remember his name, the Shia Imam.
Imam Tawhidi.
Tawhidi, there we go. So those sort of views, are they going to be accepted? I mean, what's the chances of those? So I support them in that sense. And like you quite rightly said, they are excellent human beings. They just don't follow the Quran accurately or straightforwardly as you would read the book. So what's your thought on that?
I'm optimistic, because even though the poll numbers show differently, and I stand by those figures that I've quoted in my book, that 67% of Pakistanis, for instance, believe that homosexuality is a punishable offense, and there should be some sort of a physical punishment for it. And adultery is another one. I think some very high number does it. But here's a conundrum, right? I still believe, for example, I'll just focus on Pakistani society, because it's probably one of the most important Muslim countries, purely because of his size. I would say Saudi Arabia as well, but Saudi Arabia population is very small. They have money, but Pakistan is a fairly important Muslim country. Indonesia, nobody cares because they're just too far in the east, and it looks like a different world. To Australians, they are very important, though. When you show these people who say, yes, there should be stoning brought back, or there should be beheading brought back, when you show them the actual beheading, and you can see that yourself in countless number of YouTube comments when you actually see the video, and then all the Muslims are saying, no, this is not Islam, she should not have been stoned to death. They're making some sort of an excuse, because when you visually see something horrible happening in a society where it doesn't happen, for example, there's no stoning in Pakistan. So people say, yes, I want stoning to be brought back. But when they actually see it, they don't accept it. Yes, their attitude might be different when stoning is actually prevalent in a Pakistani society. For example, in Saudi Arabia, there's a chop square. I'm sure people are desensitized to it. Most people would be okay with it, and they'll go, after watching someone getting beheaded, they'll just go about the business. but in a society where there's an effort, purposeful effort made that we're not going to bring up harsh Sharia law such as beheading or amputation in our society, then people mold to it. I'll give you an objective example of that. So those 67%, I used to have that in my in my bookmarks. They're very damning statistics, and Sam Harris has quoted them a number of times. I'm sure you're aware of those Pew polls that I'm talking about, that 67% people say that the homosexuals should be killed, high numbers, and that's the same across all Muslim world. But what happens when people go to vote, when people go on election day? You know, the political parties, the hardcore Islamist political parties, that guarantee you that we will bring the Sharia law, we will bring beheading, we will bring amputation, we will bring stoning back. They categorically say that we will bring this, but they only get 2 to 3% of vote from the entire electorate. The people, mediocre parties, the centrist parties, a little bit on the right, a little bit on the left, but mainstream centrist parties, like Imran Khan's party or the party of Benazir Bhutto or Nawaz Sharif, the centrist party, they don't want to bring religion into the state, even though it's an Islamic state. They get the votes, but the hardcore Islamist parties don't get the vote. I mean, for example, when I was 16, 17, when I was going through the religious phase, I was supporting Jamaat-e-Islami, which is one of those hardcore Islamist parties in Pakistan. They say that we'll bring Sharia law. I would have voted for them, because my line of thinking was straight from Islam. I was a firm believer that Sharia law should be enforced for whatever reason. Obviously, if you start beheading, that rationality, if you start beheading murderers, the murders will go away. That's what you think. But that doesn't happen in Pakistani society. So that, along with the fact that whenever you show someone a beheading video or a stoning video, they don't agree with that. So I think so the question is left, why do they say that this should happen? I have a theory on that. Now, I can't objectively show that to you, apart from these two examples that I just quoted. It's because when you're raised with a belief that Islam is good means Islam, Sharia is the actual punishment prescribed by the God. If you genuinely believe that, then how are you going to have the guts to say that, no, I disagree with this particular law that God made? So it's fashionable, or it's easy, or it's convenient to say, yeah, I believe in Sharia. Okay, you believe in Sharia? Should we bring back beheading? Since I've said I should bring back Sharia, then yeah, I have to say this as well. So they say yes, and they just run along with it. And I think the other example is Richard Dawkins' survey that he did, that they asked, why did you call yourself Christian? And people said, we just call ourselves Christians because Christian means good, and I like to think I'm a good person. So I think it's just, there's a lot of ignorance in the religious community, and this is why I think more critical thinking flows through the environment. And if we can get moderate Muslims as allies who promote that kind of critical thinking, religion will die itself.
In your book, you ask a very nice question, I think, because I think you're very gentle. You're on the one hand, you're saying, well, do this or else. But then on the other hand, you always give people a way out, even when you corner them. One of those things, and I like this, you say, in this, well, is this something that if you do whatever you have to do, is that what a good person would do? Can you put yourself in the shoes of a good person and then do this act? And I think this is what you're just referring to. If you're a good person, like we had just had Ali Dawa and hijab and people saying, yeah, stoning needs to be part of Sharia, is part of Sharia, therefore we should have it. Yes, in a perfect Sharia state. This is what Majid Nawaz always asked. And this is exactly where your question comes in. Have you tried this with people, asking them, is this what you, as a good person, can you put yourself in the shoes of a good person? Is this still what you would do and think?
Yeah, well, and other than that goes back to my chapter, how I wrote that, how to debate with a Muslim apologist, and the 3 points, and the 2 points are very important, which can relate to that. The claims that have some reason, but you can argue whether they're good reasons or not, like chopping of the hands. Is it a good reason or not? We can debate about it. But as I said, we are a product of our society. If you are living in Rwanda or Uganda when there was a brutal civil war happening, and when we see that, when refugees come to Australia, for instance, we see a distinct pattern of violence because they're a product of a society at a time. I'm not saying they're bad people. They grew up when they witnessed their family members being hacked to death or being chopped into pieces. So that violence can be normalized to them. But in a society where violence doesn't happen, I mean, even if we see a little paper cut and someone bleeding, and our heart goes like, oh, what is this? You know, like, but every time when I see someone trip, I don't know, some people laugh. I always go, oh, I have this weird reaction to it because we are a product of our society. And so that's why I think it's important for that person. And again, human behavior is subjective and it's relevant to your social upbringing. And when you look at this person and you ask, would you be okay to see someone chopping off someone's hand? I remember watching a video. There used to be a website called eBombs World or something like that. I think I can't remember exactly. That's back in the early noughts, and it used to have brutal images, videos. This is obviously before ADSL and fast broadband internet days, and it would take forever to download them, or even pictures. And there was one video that I watched of a Russian soldier captured by Chechen rebels. They put a foot on his head, and they just put a knife through his neck, and they just slaughtered him in a halal, how you slaughter an animal. And I was in a hardcore angry Muslim state at that point, that there was evils being done in Kashmir, Palestine, at that time, Chechnya, all these evil infidels are killing Muslims. Despite of me being so angry, because I had never seen violence like that, I saw that and it just shook my very foundation. And I say, I cannot, I may believe in Allah and I may believe in all the bad things that West has been doing on us poor Muslims. I don't think I could do that. And that's why I ask those people, it's easy to say, yes, behead the murderer, but would you actually be able to do it? And forget about whether it's the right thing to do or not. Would you actually be able to do it? I think it's very important, and that just brings up some humanity in us. But if I was, for instance, growing up in Rwanda or Uganda, for instance, at that time, I would have been perfectly fine because I would have seen someone getting beheaded 1,000 times before. I like to think that most of the people still have their humanity intact, and that's why when we present these ideas, and this is exactly the reason why even Muslim apologists now, even though they say the Sharia is the law of Allah and they make all types of excuses for their religion, even then they say, no, I don't think we should have beheading in this day and age. No, we shouldn't have stoning in this day and age. Because it's their humanity just begging to come out and rebel against this eternal God's law. But they just can't make another jump and say, okay, I'm dissenting against this law. Why don't you dissent against the entire idea? And that's a big challenge for a believer himself. But that's why, confirmation bias is very strong. They somehow create a rationale to go around it. As I said, even atheists will go to heaven, some Muslims think. I mean, how do you define that? How do you get out of that? Then I say there's no need to get out of that. Just let them be.
I mean, you can let them believe it, right? But I mean, if they have a straightforward reading of the book, there's, I mean, how many times? Over 100 times it talks about the punishment, the unpleasantness that will happen to disbelievers. So, yes, well, like I agree with you, right? As I said, these are, in a sense, these are good people to have as next door neighbors, right? But if they read the book and they get such a wild interpretation, so it's a case of, I suppose, your thought on this. It's either a case of, do they care what is true, or do they want to be better human beings than their book? And if that's more important than getting a truthful, straightforward interpretation, should we just allow them to do that?
Yeah, but people don't see things straightforwardly. So they think that I can hold on to this book and I can still be a good person because they have created an entire alternative rationale that it was okay for that time only. Maybe it was metaphorical. It's very difficult to actually debate and argue with a moderate Muslim, because he hasn't created an educated moderate Muslim, not just the one who has never heard of anything. It's very difficult to do it with them, because the entire concept of hell, which was the primary foundation for someone like Hassan Nadwan for his apostasy, because he said it numerous times that the entire concept of hell, he just could not ignore it when he was a believing Muslim, that finite crimes will be punished with infinite hell, torture. How does that happen? How can a merciful God do this? So in all of that, the entire premise of Hassan Nadwan argument will be broken by one person who says, well, you are not a kufr, you genuinely believe there's no God, so there's no hell for you. So how are you gonna get around it? You can show him 100 verses where it says disbelievers will go to hell. I will regrow their skin and I will burn them again for eternity. But he says, well, that's not for you, because you genuinely believe there's no God. So and I said it, even if you genuinely did believe that there is a God, but I'm going to go against it, which I don't understand why anyone would do it. Even then, the hell should not be eternal. And people would say, should Hitler be burning in hell forever? I would say, no, he shouldn't be. Now, I would get in trouble. Maybe send him for 1,000 years. I don't know. I would probably, again, he would have his own reasons, that his brain was fucked up, that he only thought in a certain way. He didn't have a free will. So the concept of hell goes out of the window. And then I'll go one step further, and that Muslim would say, well, hell is just used as a carrot and a stick kind of policy. And when the time comes, God will not use hell, because in other places God has said, I will forgive people if you ask for genuine forgiveness. So on an eternal day, you can ask for forgiveness. So people don't look at it clear in a clear manner, and there's contradiction.
Harris, there's so many problems with that. I mean, next time you have a show, invite me on with your friend that believes this, right? And I'll have that conversation. I'll say to him straight up, as I did with other sort of moderate, nice Muslims, really, people that, like I say, you could live next door to, right? Be quite happy to live next door to them. But let's have a conversation on your show at some point, or on your channel or something, with one of these guys, because we battled to get them onto the Gin and Tonic. I think maybe there's an air of, it's a bit scary coming on here. But so maybe it works better with yours. Yeah, but I'll have that conversation, right?
I can, yeah, you can, but my point is, again, at the end of the day, I am somehow feeling less interested and I'm losing all the energy in debating with these type of people, because if they're saying we want to promote your thinking, we want you to be able to coexist, I want to be able to have this kind of conversation with you in a Pakistani university in front of everyone without a risk on your life, then I want to encourage him to do that, and instead of me just wanting to shit on his belief and just trying to make a fool out of himself. So I'm just, as I said, personally, I've got nothing against those people who want to do it, because obviously there's a room for that. We would want religion or false ideas. Forget about religion. We would just want false ideas to be gone from the world anyway. So yeah, I'm just speaking about my own journey at this point, and I'm just finding less and less energy to go into that debate, as opposed to helping people instead. I'm more interested in helping those 4 million atheists in Pakistan who can't express themselves, who can't come out and say, I want to be an atheist. I shared a screenshot recently that it's so silly, right? And when you apply for Pakistani passport, it literally says, let me share that with you guys. It's a very silly thing to look at, and no one can justify it. Let me share that with you.
Presumably it's some sort of discriminatory thing. You might have mentioned this before, but I won't steal your thunder, so let's see what you bring up there.
It's just have a look at this. It says, this is can everyone see it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just for some reason saying. So this says that if your religion is Islam, this is a Pakistani passport official government website. I tried to renew my passport and then I gave up anyway, because I don't want to renew it with my religion being Islam. This Pakistani website says if your religion is Islam, you can't change it to any other religion. But I've spoken to a Hindu who applied for a passport, and he could change it to Islam. The conundrum here is there's an entire law and an entire social fabric relying on the fact that Ahmadis can't call themselves Muslims. They can't call themselves Muslims. So Muslims are saying, if you are an Ahmadi, we don't want you to call yourself a Muslim. But on the other hand, there are atheists who genuinely, and a lot of atheists actually shit on Islam, who genuinely don't believe in God, they don't believe in Prophet, they don't believe in anything Islam has to say. But you are forcing them to say that you're a Muslim. How does that make sense? At a government level, it just doesn't make sense. So I am more interested in throwing these kind of ideas and exposing open, blatant hypocrisies that affect the lives of millions of people. And if we can just manage to, for example, change that, if I can reach the right person in the Pakistani political hierarchy, and we can just change that, I think that would be an immense big bang, so to speak, in the Pakistani society, that all of a sudden we'll see 4 million, 5 million, 6 million atheists in Pakistan who are not counted in the official census.
How would you go about doing that, though? Is part of this by sort of embracing the moderates and putting aside their, in some sense, to a degree, either irrational or way out their interpretations? So is that sort of perhaps a view that you think could work in order to allow this to happen within Islam? In Pakistan?
I genuinely believe that this is the way to do it. I don't think defecating on the Qur'an or drawing really ugly caricatures of Muhammad would help in that sense. I genuinely believe that we need to find allies in the moderate Muslim. If Majid Nawaz is Pakistani, he doesn't have a lot of say in Pakistan, but we need to find Majid Nawazes in Pakistan who would promote that kind of thinking. Celebrities are a big plus.
Like Hood Boy?
Well, Hood Boy is an atheist. Hood Boy already gets a lot of flack for being an atheist, so people don't listen to him, even though he's the nicest guy on earth. He's a scientist. He's got the rational thinking for everything. He still has a lot. He's done immense work. A lot of critical thinkers in Pakistan that I've spoken to say they, even though Hood Boy has never called himself an atheist publicly, but it's clear from every word that he utters that he does not believe in this nonsense.
I've interviewed him, and he told me as much. I've got like 4 or 5 hours with him.
On the record or off the record?
This is the problem. He asked me later because he had a debate with sources. We had 2 sort of sessions. One session was his general attitude, where he gave me his background and how his boss became, like he was very disgruntled, went back to London, died there because he was an Ahmadiyya Qadiani, and then how he then, sorry?
That's scientist Abdus Salam.
Yeah, exactly. Because he was his boss, okay? And then he went off to London, and he actually died in London. And then we went through everything that Hood Boy is doing in Pakistan itself, how he is fighting the press and ignorant Muslims at the same time. And then we had a cut, and then we went to the section with the sources interview. And then later he asked me only to publish the one with the sources interview and not to do the rest because this was too dangerous.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, and we have to encourage and appreciate him for still living in Pakistan. I mean, he's a scientist. I think he's
exactly. I asked him exactly this question: "What the fuck are you still doing there?" And he just laughed and he says, "Look, I see my vocation as an educator here in Pakistan where it is most needed."
Exactly, and he's a professor at the University of Massachusetts as well. I think, or one of the American universities. He goes there. He spends 3 months or something, and teaches physics there. So this guy is not, he's a genuine physicist. But the problem is, again, he doesn't get that mainstream attention to an extent. But he's been given some sort of a lifeline that, okay, as long as you don't cross the red line. Now that red line is always shifting and evolving. But now we need, my point is, now we are in a newer generation. Now that we have to take that step further. Hood Boy has done that for the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years or however many years. And he has inspired a lot of atheism in Pakistan. But now we need, and maybe because of that, there's a product of moderate Muslims who are saying, yes, atheistic arguments should be educated to people. People should make up their own mind, and they should be able to flourish. Now, those are, and I'm talking about celebrities who can promote that kind of thinking. And I've had a dialogue with this celebrity, and I found really positives. And I got criticized by a lot of people for why I did let him off the hook when it came to religion so many times. And for some reason, I just didn't have the energy to just keep telling him that he's wrong because of this and this and this, because I was getting more and more interested in how he was saying that I would love you to come to Pakistan and be able to debate or speak about these things in a Pakistani university where there are thousands of students there. I think that is more crucial, and obviously I would have to do it, or someone would have to do it. And I think this is probably the way forward, in my opinion. There's still room for hardcore antagonizing ex-Muslims who just go really hardcore way. I know there's Amin Nawabi's way of thinking that reform is just slowing the death of Islam. Just paraphrasing it, and he doesn't support reform at all. But as Rob, you said as well, that we would rather have a nice moderate Muslim as a neighbor, but we would still deep down inside, we know that he's wrong. But that's fine. There's so many things. You and I could be wrong about one or two other things, not on religion. We are all atheists. I think we are right. But you and I could be wrong on so many other issues. But it's fine to be wrong. That's the idea we're trying to promote. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have disagreement. But what is not okay is to just shut you down, put you in prison, or worse.
Yeah, I think it's a case of, and somebody's obviously posting in the chat there as well that they feel that Majid Nawaz is a fake because he knows that there's 100 verses in the Quran that speak about hellfire, and he's pretending it doesn't exist. And like you say, that's the line that I think each person needs to decide on, right? If somebody like Majid Nawaz says, I care what is true, and we are, then he is putting himself in a position of needing to defend his views. If he goes, hey, this is the tactic I'm going to use to help deconvert or to modernize Muslims, etc., that's fine. And if he says, behind the scenes, quietly in our ear, I don't really believe what I'm saying. I'm saying it for a political or for a social end or for the betterment of humanity, then you can go, okay, that's a tactic that you are using. At least you're honest about that, right? And so I guess that's a conundrum, I guess, in a sense for them. And you've taken that, and I would to a degree.
Having said that, Rob, I still don't understand. I mean, with Majid, I could never do that. If I was secretly an atheist but pretending to be a Muslim, just under the garb that, okay, I'm trying to help humanity by, we can't change Islam from the outside, we have to do it from inside. I could never do that, and personally, I don't think I would respect that either. So I don't think I would like to give Majid Nawaz a credit, the concession that if he says he's a Muslim, maybe he's a Muslim, because I have spoken with some amazing moderate Muslims.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying he's not a Muslim. I'm saying that if he cares about what's true and he puts himself out there, then he sort of does put himself a little bit in the firing line to defend the views he's got, particularly against other Muslims. Forget about us. We can say, okay, hey, Majid, you seem like a nice guy, and your views are far more moderate. But I think where he's going to find the challenge, and that's what I noticed, is against other Muslims. And so,
and I think
what happens then?
And I think the hard challenge that they have in front of them is to convince their Muslim community who believe in the hardcore Islam that is not the right Islam. This is the right Islam. And then right Islam is such a stretch that I think it'd be very hard for hardcore Muslims, or a lot of Muslims, to, for example, forego the idea of hell, for instance. Like Jews have done it successfully, but they're small in number. But how are you going to convince that? So they have the hard work to do. So I'm just saying that we should encourage them in a way that, okay, I think they're giving a lot more than we are giving.
Yes, I do think they're sacrificing more, no doubt about it. I find it difficult, though. Like I say, I think the best I could say is, listen, I'd love to have you as a neighbor. You're the sort of Muslim that I could live with, that can live in the society. Let's be part of my community. I would find it difficult for me, and maybe that's where my thinking can evolve. It'd be difficult for me to support somebody when if they care about what is true and they're claiming that what they believe is true, and they're asking me to support the views that I see do not match the Quran. That would be very difficult for me to do. There might be a bigger, like you say, it might be almost like a political thing where there's a bigger goal to it, and maybe my thinking will evolve over time. But I find that very difficult to do if they, agree that they care what's true, and then say, "Hey, can you support me?" I'll go, "You know what? That's like, a flat earther saying, 'Hey, just support me.' Because I've got all these other good things that'll happen as long as you support my view on the flat earth." I'm going, I can't do that. I have to call that out. So, but that's where maybe,
yeah, no, I agree with you. I understand that, but flat earth, what would we support them in? We would support them in, they have a right to speak, they have a right to live, they have a right to coexist. You would support them on that. You would not support them on that the earth is flat. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm not telling these moderate Muslims that they're right. I'm not saying that there is a God and your interpretation is valid. I'm actually saying that your interpretation is wrong. I don't agree with that. This is why I am an atheist, and this is why my book is still on sale, because I stand by that. But I want to move forward. I want you to raise voice for atheists in Pakistan and the Muslim world, so they can express themselves. And more they express themselves, I firmly believe that religions will die eventually because of that.
I think that's a valid point, right? Hey, can you help us to help these people who you claim, moderate Muslims, you don't want to see persecuted and might even go to heaven?
And this is why I said they are giving up more. If a moderate Muslim comes out, risks his life against the jihadis and Islamists, if he's doing more, I'm already out. I've already said a lot of nasty things, or things that a lot of Muslims will see as wajibul qatl, like I'm worthy to be killed. So they are actually sacrificing more in that sense. They're coming out and they say, okay, I agree with Harris that he should be allowed to speak in a university.
Yeah. Before we go on to a sort of a separate topic that I've got some interest in, I just wanted to see Stops is a bit quiet there. Stops, do you want to sort of say anything more, or shall we?
Well, I wanted to go back to the book a little bit.
Yeah. Me too. So you go ahead.
I'm so excited to have you on here, because I thought there are so many brilliant things in there, and I love your approach that you go from the theoretical to the practical, and I'm really excited to talk to you about these things. I don't even know like where to start now, because I'd like to pick your brain, because what you do, because you spoke about this already, how to debate with a Muslim apologist, and you throw like 3 different approaches out there, 3 different tracks that you can go on, how you approach this, how you do this. Do you see that the way that other people, not you, but other people, are talking and discussing with Muslims, and how other people are approaching this, is actually completely wrong and has no impact looking at it from an insider's point of view?
I think no, I wouldn't condemn one way or the other, because I think all approaches work. I mean, for example, when I was a little bit more antagonistic, and when I'm just shitting a little bit more on Islam and being a bit more crude, there are people still telling me that, hey, you know what you said, it makes sense. I'm an atheist now, or people like you. A lot of people, Pakistanis, know Abdullah Gondal and I for some reason, because we speak in Urdu as well. And both of us get a lot of messages that he and I, or then add in Abdullah Samir, or then add in Richard Dawkins, and Pervez Hoodboy. Credit never goes to one person. So, and I've seen you can be very vague, where you don't discuss Islam at all, with how Pervez Hoodboy does. He just promotes science, and he answers everything from science perspective, and then people join the dots themselves. They say, "Well, the Big Bang verse says this," but Hoodboy is saying this is actually Big Bang, and that doesn't sound like the Big Bang verse doesn't sound compatible with this, or salt and fresh. So you can do it in a very vague way without antagonizing Islam, and that works. And then you can shit on Islam, and then that can work. And then now I'm saying, okay, I'm going to change my approach a little bit more, where I'm going to be not as harsh towards Islam or religions. I'm going to float out the general ideas. So that can work too, and that I think that will work too. So I don't think there's any right or wrong way of doing it. I'm just looking at it how I'm going to do it.
Right.
Amin Nawabi's approach might be more antagonistic, and I'm sure it's working as well in Iran. So, and it's working in a lot of other places. So I think people are doing it different ways. It's a multiple-pronged attack, and it's working. Even reform is somehow, some people say, even reformist Islam is killing Islam, because when you take away the concept of hell from a Muslim, I mean, a lot of people are going to be saying, what the fuck is this? You know, like, I mean, what else can I believe in? So, critical thinking is just killing religions, and I think all approaches work.
Okay, and now a follow-up on that, because you give different examples of how to talk to a Muslim apologist. And one thing I like there, that you say you can go from the very practical, like you go and you could take the miracle claims apart, but there are also more theoretical parts, like your circular reasoning that you bring up. How can the God be merciful and have hell at the same time? How can he be all-knowing and have a test? And you give an example. I can't remember exactly which one you give there, but I remember that you gave an example of circular reasoning, the way that it goes. So you go from very practical to more theoretical to more mind games. Do you think that those actually work?
I think they do. As I said, we have a biggest example of Hassan Radwan, for instance. I mean, he was a religious teacher. He's very educated in Arabic, and he just could not wrap his head around the concept of hell. And he would say, well, there's hell. On one hand, God is threatening me with terrible torture. And on the other hand, he just ends some random verses with, no doubt, Allah is the most merciful. There's you'll probably know this. I don't know if it's a hadith or it's a Qur'an, a statement that Allah loves people. Allah's love for people is more than 72 times mother. So it's more than 72.
I think that's
mother.
the number one hadith Qudsi.
Okay, whatever. So then you go, okay, and I've spoken to a lot of Muslims. They say, yeah, well, they can't wrap their head around it, because a mother would, barring some psychopaths, a mother would, even her son is wrong, a child is wrong, mother would never put him or her behind more than any discomfort, let alone torturing them for eternity and regrowing the skin, etc. So that is a circular logic. But Allah is merciful. No, but yeah. Allah will burn me in hell. Yeah, Allah will only burn in hell to those people who are bad. So you don't have to be merciful to bad people. But then you say, okay, but God does love more than 72 mothers, but mothers, no matter how bad the son is, God will not, mother will not punish him. But Allah is all merciful. Allah is merciful like the mother. So, you know, it's a circular reason that you can keep going in and in. And for example, the free will argument, that's the example that I used, that I think it's 4153, that uses the argument that God has given free will to everyone. But then God says in chapter 2, verse 7, that Allah has blocked my free will. He has put a curtain in front of my eyes, has blocked my heart and blocked my ears. Then where's my free will? If he's made me to be a disbeliever, then where's my free will? Shouldn't I have a free will to either believe or disbelieve? But then you say no. But if you believe in God, then you can get rid of this block. So then you say, okay, how can I believe if I can't lift this block? Then you say, no, Allah has given you free will, so that's how you can lift the block. Crazy. That's a circular reasoning. It'll keep going on and on. And when you put these ideas very simply, these examples, because these examples are important, like 4153 and 227, this is important. And you give that and they go, okay, it just starts a explosion in their mind, and then they start looking into it. I'll receive random messages from random people who are so educated on the problems in the Quran, and they ask me to give my comments on that, and I look at it as like, oh, I never thought of it. I never thought of it that way. But you got the idea from somewhere that you should question these contradictions, and you can look into the circular reasoning, and you have arrived at that conclusion. Now you're an atheist. So, and no matter how much a moderate Muslim will try to spin it, that no, this block is a literal, it's a figurative block, and again, we can go into circular reasoning. No matter what a moderate Muslim would say, a person whose mind has already gone through that stage is not going to buy it.
And then what? Because I've done this. Okay, I've gone through people. The very basic one: can your God create something indestructible? And then he says, yes, he can do anything. I said, okay, can he destroy it? Yes. Yeah, but then it's not indestructible. Then it is destructible. So and they don't understand it. They will carry on. No, but he can do what he wants. They will not understand the circular reasoning and the contradiction in that.
I think you have planted a seed in their mind. We do run into a brick wall where I think Dawkins quotes that a geologist, he's a PhD geologist at Harvard or something, and said, that he looks at the evidence. He's not an uneducated fool. He says, well, if all the evidence pointed out that the Earth is older than 6,000 years old, I would still believe the Earth is 6,000 years old because the scripture said it. So that person has no reasonable rationale along it. He's just going blindly on faith. So that person does understand that if God can do everything, then can he destroy himself? But no, hang on. If he can destroy himself, then he's not indestructible. But oh no, only God can do it. So so either way, he's not indestructible. So again, that's another example of circular reasoning. But that does leave a little problem in their mind that they have to solve, and I think it's a very difficult problem. People can ignore those problems. That's the point. People can look away when they see a belief that just a problem that just shakes their very core. And it happens to all of us. I was thinking that, when I had this thought that I'm going to have a different approach, I was having a little bit of a sad moment in me. Like, I was like, what am I going to do? I've been doing this for the last couple of years. I've been criticizing Islam in a very aggressive manner, which I'm still going to, I'm going to criticize Islam or all religions. But I'm thinking I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to try to leave room for moderate Muslims to come and shake hands with me. And that's not going to happen if I defecate on the Qur'an, or if I piss on the Qur'an. That's not going to happen. I'm going to lose the moderate voices as well. So, but then I was thinking, okay, but there's an expectation. People want me to shit on Islam, and that's who I am. And then I realized, whoa, I've always believed my identity is my face. No title is my identity, because my beliefs can change and evolve with time, and hence my identity can change. So that doesn't matter. Identity is a subjective term for me. So when did I get locked into this identity issue that now, because I'm an ex-Muslim or an anti-Islam or anti-religion, that I can't get out of that? So I can get out of that, and I would get out of that. And as I said, I would promote atheism. I would criticize religions. As I said, my book is still out there, and I stand by most of what I've written in it, and I'll go by it. But it's not a matter of ego or personal. That it's not a matter of an ID. But people don't see it like that. That's unfortunate. Like, as you said, the example that you gave to that person, he's seeing that there's a circular reason, there's a problem there, but he can't ignore it. That's my problem.
Okay, I have two questions left for your book, because I had my book finished and ready and everything, and I thought, okay, let me go publish it. And then looking for a publisher, I changed my view on so many things that eventually, because it took me like 2 years to find somebody, I retracted it. I said, no, I cannot publish this book anymore because I've changed so many views on that. I'm not going to. Because you did some research on this, okay? It's not only the writing of the book. You did a lot of research before that. What part of the book are you particularly proud of, where you have looked into something and you found something and you were able to present it, and after that you felt, yes, here I've done a good job? Don't tell me the whole book, and don't tell me the intro or something.
No, I don't know. I think there's. I don't know. I think that's a very difficult one to answer, because I'm happy about the fact that I've acknowledged that when people, for example, quote this extremist views in the majority of Muslims, but when it comes to the action, they don't follow through. They don't live up to their own views. But for some reason, even I used to use that against Muslims. And that 67% of Muslims believe that stoning should be brought back. But when it's brought back, they don't actually live up to it. So I think my recognition, and there's a chapter of Islamophobia in there, which again, I don't like the term Islamophobia, but I said how it is false. The Rise of Islamism, I think is the chapter's name or something like that. I think that recognition was important because I gave the facts, and I think there's 35% of Belgian prison population, for instance, are Muslims.
Muslim,
when the actual population of Muslims is only 5%.
yeah.
There's the number is horrible in other areas as well. United Kingdom and Denmark, where there's another bad one. 20% of prison population is Muslims, but population percentage is 0.5% of Muslims. So those key things are important to recognize. So recognize that, but they can go into other non-religious issues as well. But there's something wrong there. So both ways we can look at it. And when we go into the core beliefs that 67% believe stoning should be stoning should be brought back, then why don't they vote? Why don't at least 20% of those people vote the Islamist parties? I think that recognition is important because Sam Harris is one person who quotes that a lot, and I really love and respect him. And I wanted to communicate with him on that topic, that I think he should stop quoting that, because there's an objective evidence, on the other hand, that these people do not vote the Islamist party. So there must be something wrong in their mind.
Yes.
Something definitely wrong. So I think that is a good point that I like. Okay,
finally, the last question from me on your book. Why should people buy your book?
Well, I think it's a very good, concise understanding of Islam. I have tried to be as fair as I can. As I said, there's some arguments that may support Muslims as well, but most of the arguments actually do not support Islam. Well, actually, nothing supports Islam, so to speak. But there's a lot of room for Muslims to be educated on that. And if you are a Westerner, actually, I'll take that back. My favorite chapter is the Science in Islam part. That chapter is probably one of the longest ones, and it's so to the point and concise, and I know it probably frustrates you a lot when Muslims bring this science in the Quran. You want to pull your hair out, because yes, people like Zakir Naik have actually popularized it so much that most of these believers, Muslims, don't have any understanding of science, but they just regurgitate someone like Zakir Naik has said it. Therefore, they're just going to, for example, the Big Bang they're just going to blurt it out. They've got no idea what Big Bang is, etc. So all those ones, the common ones, the mountain formation, the secrets of mountain in the Quran, and the sun has an orbit around the Milky Way, those kind of arguments. I think they're very concise and precise, and they just give you, they just basically educate you on basic problems on Islam. I could have written more in the post-Muhammad's life history, but I didn't want the book to go more than 240, 50 pages, because then it becomes really out of control. So I like that part. And I think so if you want to understand Islam from a critic's point of view, because what worries me a lot, the white women who convert to Islam because their boyfriend is a Muslim, and he can't marry her unless she converts. The problem that happens after that, and there was one Australian woman, she fell in love with this Pakistani guy. She was going to move to Pakistan. She was converting to Islam, and she somehow ran into me, and I told her all the things. I said, okay, your statement is worth half than that of a man. It's clear cut. Your husband can have 3 more wives on you. She wasn't told about all of this, but despite the fact that I had told her, there was a hope in her heart that her husband would do it. So I don't know what happened to her. I think she probably migrated to Pakistan, and she might be there now. Maybe her husband is trying to marry another one. I don't know what happened, but it could be possible that he was a moderate Muslim and he didn't believe in any of that. So there you go. That can always happen too. But if my book was published at that point, I would have given her the copy of the book free of charge, and I would have said, just read that before you convert to Islam.
So you are providing the fine print for free, fresh converts.
Yes,
Okay,
that's very important.
before I give this to Rob, I just like to, I don't know if this is consolation or if this is, when I moved to Germany a couple of years ago, the funny thing is that I was initially put into a religion, the Catholic religion, because in Germany, where you have a sort of a separation between church and state, the government collects taxes of the churches. And because I did not, I never registered in Germany, so they didn't know anything about me. So they automatically put me into the Catholic Church segment because it's the most expensive. So they said, well, we put you into this initially so that you get the highest payment, and then you just claim it back if you change your mind about a religion, and then you will get a refund. And I said, listen, lady, what the foof are you talking about? Who today? I thought I'm in Germany. Who needs a religion? Who needs a God? I'm not part of any God. You know what I had to do? I had to go to the municipality. I had to get a signed piece of paper where I declared that I am not in any of the organized churches or religions or anything like that. And this is in Europe, in Germany. Can you believe it? And you think Pakistan is bad?
Yeah, well, it's. I think there's a default position that people are put. Yeah, well, I mean, the bad things everywhere. Like, I mean, in Australia, I mean, I ran for the Senate and we got 11,000 votes, so it wasn't that bad, but it was bad. We needed something like 220,000 votes to win in the Senate, but I only made up. I was asked by the Secular Party to just get in there, and so it was a last-minute decision. But anyway, so there are a lot of things that are wrong in Australia as well. The businesses that are registered under a church or any religious organization are exempt from taxes. So you might think, oh, okay, but the problem is those businesses are competing with other businesses that are not registered under a religious charity.
Exactly.
So
that's where this happens.
Their prices are more, and there's an unfair advantage to these people. And again, the faith schools is a problem in Australia, where my tax dollars should not go in funding faith schools. I don't agree with the education that has been given in faith schools, etc. So I'll give you a very funny fact, and every time I tell someone, my friend, he's a moderate Muslim. He migrated to Australia recently, last year, and he was very energetic, and he said, I'm going to take my kids to Islamic school. I said, I rolled my eyes. I said, why would you do that? Now you're living in a Western country. You should give them proper, good education. Don't take them to Islamic school. He didn't listen. His wife is a little bit more hardcore, but anyway. So and he's whipped. So he took his kids to this Epping. There's a school in Epping, which is a big Islamic school. They went there. I kid you not. I drove them there. They went there and they saw these kids they were wearing hijab, but all bodies covered with this, very loose clothing. The boys are walking in these very weird. I felt like I was in the 7th century, or 11th century or something. Like I wasn't in the modern world. They went in there. The faculty or whatever, the principal or headmaster or whoever it was, they interviewed the kids, and they said, yeah, okay, sure, you can come. You have to pay top dollars too. They came out and they were like, let's get out of here. And they put them in a normal Australian school. So they said, so a Pakistani Muslim, a practicing Muslim, came to Australia and he found the religious schools in Australia more religious than in Pakistan. How's that?
I see this all the time. People don't believe me. I tell people, like, the Muslims in Doha or in Abu Dhabi are less fundamentalist than the Muslims that I see in Europe. They are much more relaxed about this. I mean, come on, if you go to the office every day with them, it's like they come to you with questions because they know that after a while they knew that I know the Quran better than they did. And this is why they came to me, and they were quite open with this. They hated Ramadan with the fasting. They hated all the stuff with the 5 times prayer. So they didn't. They used all sorts of, every single excuse that you find in the Quran, they used. And that's it. So they are more hypocritical, I think, and they are more relaxed about Islam than the people I see in the UK, for example.
But the worrying, again, I want to emphasize on that point, the worrying thing is the religious schools in a Western country are more fundamentalist and they're teaching more hardcore religion than someone who is actually religious from a supposed extremist religious country. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but then okay, this is a question in the chat, and this is something that we need to talk about. Because you're saying a moderate Muslim. Okay, I'm always bringing this example. What is the difference between a hardcore and a moderate Nazi? Do I want a moderate Nazi living next to me? Is a moderate Nazi still the Nazi? And I think there is a difference in here where we are talking about moderate Muslims. So maybe you can explain this.
Okay, so yeah, funny one. So there could be a moderate Nazi. I mean, there could be a moderate Nazi who would say, well, maybe in the 30s we had to kill the Jews, but now we don't have to kill them. So we still have to believe that they are bad people and they're bad influence, but we don't have to kill them. We don't have to, we no longer have to put them in concentration camps. We should love and respect them. And, that's the problem with the moderate people. They can twist and turn any ideology they want. So there you go. That's a moderate Nazi for you. He would say, well, I believe the Jews are bad influence, but let them be. So there you go. Well, how are you going to deal with that? If a Nazi genuinely believes that.
Okay, and now translate this across into moderate Muslim.
Yeah, so modern Muslim is the same one who says, yeah, well, homosexuals, God doesn't like homosexuals, but if they do it in private, I don't care about it. Okay, women should be allowed to go out and work. No, in this day and age, one man should be for one woman, and there should be no slavery. They've already done it. No sex slaves. There's no hell. It was just God, he was just trying to show the carrot and stick. So there you go. That's a moderate Muslim for you. So how are you going to tell him, you're stupid, man? That's not what Islam says. Islam literally says that you'll bet. No, but that's, God saw it differently. It was just for 7th century pagans and Bedouin Arabs who would not have understood the complexity of the universe. That's why God just said in the Big Bang verse that it's earth and heaven that He separated, even though earth came 9 billion years after. So my point is, you can always twist and turn things, and just like how I define moderate Nazi. So people can always do it. What do we do with that? The only thing is we can just hope that once we are putting that out openly, there will always be people who would be rational and who would say, no, what this moderate Muslim is saying doesn't make sense. I'm either going to be a devout Muslim, and then when you become a devout Muslim, then you have to hate homosexuals and bring back sexual slavery and all of that. Or I'm going to be like Harris, I'm going to be atheist.
Or you, as a moderate Muslim, you have the fundamentalist Muslim do the killing.
Yeah. Well, I think I know that Majid Nawaz defined it as concentric circles, but I was writing about this a long time ago, that you have hardcore jihadis, like the foot soldiers of ISIS and Taliban. Then you have Islamists, like people like these guys, Ali Dawa and Muhammad Hijab and all that. Then you have moderate Muslim that a lot of people live in there. This is the moderate Muslim that I just told you about. No hell, yeah, don't kill the homosexuals. It's okay. Let them fuck each other, whatever they do, as long as they're not spreading it. They can all have any interpretation they want. And then we have the secularist people who, like Pervez Hoodboy, who are probably atheists, they might pretend to be Muslim, or people like even Majid Nawaz, throw him in that category as well. It might be an atheist. I don't know. So so there are four main types of Muslims.
Okay, Rob? Because Rob normally has questions which are a little bit more
sorry, matey,
and not so hard.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Can you carry on? And maybe can you just ask about being an ex-Muslim? I've just had a bit of an emergency call come in, so I'm going to mute myself for a few moments. Just talk about the influence on ex-Muslims, and also the numbers in the book, if you would stop. So I'd love to hear about that, but I've just got to take this call quickly.
Sure. Okay, I think I got the question. So this is a good thing, right? I mean, Gallup 2015 shows 2% of Pakistanis are convinced atheists, not agnostics, not like, yeah, maybe, not like none of that nonsense, moderate Muslim or any of that. Convinced atheists. Now that translates as 4 million, 4 million atheists in Pakistan. Where are they? I mean, I see a few thousand on Facebook groups, but where are the rest of them? Now, I want to encourage them to come out. You know, the tipping point that Richard Dawkins talk about, I think that's the tipping point that we need to go to. Turkey's got 4.8 million. Malaysia got 1.8 million. Saudi Arabia, where you can be beheaded, you could be called a terrorist, they're 1.6 million, which is 5% of the population. That was in 2012, I think. I'm hoping Gallup will do another one in 2019. Historically, they've done it every 7 years. So sorry, I think the survey was in 2012. So they do it every 7 years. Hopefully there will be one in 2019. I'm hoping that number would be more. So the ex-Muslim movement, I think it's spreading like a wildfire. There was a recent survey that came out, and I think BBC reported on that most Arabs are leaving Islam in huge numbers. I think something was like doubled in the last 20 years or something. That is extremely positive news for us, and I think the word ex-Muslim has done wonders. That has just opened up that it's perfectly fine to be an ex-Muslim. You know, we don't have horns over our head. We don't eat babies, and we're not some terribly ugly Dajjal kind of one-eyed monsters. So I think it's doing great wonders, and which is making moderate Muslims reach out to us. You know, these moderate Muslims would not have spoken to us about anything, and that's why I'm hopeful that more celebrities will try to engage with me, and I have no disagreement left with them, other than the fact that they believe that there's a designer behind the universe, and I say, well, no, there's no designer. But everything else, the morality that is coming out of their scriptures, if you can say whatever mental gymnastics they use or whatever rationale they use, the morality that is coming out of it is coinciding with my morality. So that's why I think antagonistic approach is not good, because we lose those allies, and ex-Muslim movement will suffer because of that.
But what do you think has more impact? Is it the secular, non-Muslim? Is it the scientist? Is it the ex-Muslim who speaks like from the inside? Or who do you think has the most impact on existing Muslims today?
Well, it would have to be ex-Muslims, because people can relate. You know, one of the most primary argument people used to use, and I used to use this argument. I said, well, you know, if Islam is such a true religion, how come these brilliant people like Einstein and Stephen Hawking and all these intelligent people who have just redefined the entire universe for us, how come they don't believe in religion? Forget about religion. Well, how come they don't believe in your religion, since it's so true? And they're like, well, they were raised in a Christian household. They're not educated about Qur'an enough. I'm like, okay, all right. But now when an ex-Muslim comes out, he speaks from the heart. He or she speaks from the heart. They speak about from their own. They have their own journey. For example, ex-Muslim women, I've noticed, the primary dominating factor in their conversation are the women issues that come out of the doctrine of Islam, 4 wives and beating of wives and whatnot. So they speak from that, and that within the Muslim community as well, the different horses for courses. So ex-Muslim women are relating more Muslim women are relating with the ex-Muslim women. I was speaking with Zara about it. I was like, it's a conundrum for me though. How come 90% of my followers are males? Where are these women? Because I present all the arguments for women as well. Maybe I don't do it as passionately enough, because I try to look at holistically. And so I asked, what are your demographics? And she said, well, 90% of her followers are females, because they can relate to them. And same with Muslim men can relate to me, and they can eventually become ex-Muslim. And that's why I think scientists, as secularists, Western scientists, Western secularists, they have their own room, they have their own audience, but I think ex-Muslims themselves are making the biggest impact. I don't have any survey to show, but I can just go with my own numbers that I have, and it just kind of makes sense to me that probably is the biggest factor.
So the best would be to be a female lesbian ex-Muslim.
Well, no, it won't be, because if you are a female lesbian ex-Muslim, then you will be reaching out to a lesbian Muslim woman, because she would be able to relate herself.
Oh shit,
with
you're
that
right.
person. So no. So I think women, ex-Muslim women to Muslim equals Muslim women, Muslim men equals ex-Muslim men.
How come you abandoned all gods and didn't move over to Christianity?
Yeah, and this is what frustrates me so much about people like Christian Prince and David Wood. My problem, again, if you go back, I think it's an initial chapter that I wrote. My problem with religions is, first of all, this is the best I can do to break it down. No evidence for any god. Number two, bad morality in science, bad morality in Islam. So when I look at Christianity, it might score a little better than Islam, but it's still a bad morality. But the fundamental, the third point, the most very important one, is bad science in Quran. So when I read into Christianity, it's even worse. I know there's a different type of twist that you can put into it, that it's not a literal word of God. So if you conclude that the earth is 6,000 years old, which is obviously absurd, earth being flat, all the flat earthers are somehow inspired by the Christian faith, and virgin birth, and Jesus dying for our sins, and original sin. All of these things, just A, they're not scientifically possible, and B, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And then the more I look into other religions, more I find the same nonsense in them, which is not convincing enough for me.
Mm-hmm. But how do you see the impact of something like Christian Prince? Because I'm always fascinated to find that there will be Muslims who are still calling in, knowing they're going to get spanked, and knowing full well that his arguments are not so great, but they still call in and dying just to get owned. Why do you think that is? What is his impact?
I think he has this antagonistic approach. I tried. A lot of people told me, "Hey, get Christian Prince," and I thought, okay, I'll listen to this guy, who this guy is, and he had a conversation with Abdullah Samir, and he started off with something. Hey, look, now our modern science tells us. He also went the science in the Bible way. He said our modern science tells us there was water, and then the earth. And I said, well, no, science never tells you that. And then he spoke about the early bombardment, period. And I said, no, the earth was a molten rock. There was no water. The water came some 500 million years later. And that is also a theory. We don't 100% know, because, the one theory is that it came from the comets. Possibly did. But there was no earth. There was no water and then earth. There was earth and then 500 million years, or at least 1 billion years, and then water. And I just couldn't watch the rest of it, because I'm like, this guy is clearly biased. So I don't know why Muslims go that way. Maybe because it's so antagonistic and people are just getting riled up and they're like, no, fuck you, I'm going to prove you wrong. And then they go into it and then they get spanked. But the problem is, he can see these absurdities in Islam, but he can't see them in Bible or in again, the overall idea of God. Eternal, there's a grand designer or there's not a designer. They're the same problems. Bad design. When you look at the universe, there's bad designs. The universe is so big, it doesn't look like that it would be created for one planet. And what's the point of it? There's basic atheistic arguments, but yeah, I don't know why people get caught up in that.
I find it interesting, because even his arguments, the way that he brings this anti-Islam arguments from the Quran, I don't find them so convincing, because it's usually also just twisting some words and things around. So I think it would be very easy for a rational Muslim, for a moderate Muslim, or somebody who's got his head screwed on the right way, to go in there and totally screw around with him. So
again, so if you're genuinely doing it just to shit on religion, and again, he might have his own rationale behind everything. Again, like, I can't buy an argument that atheists are not going to go to hell when 100 other verses say that disbelievers will burn in hell. You can twist and turn anything. I give this challenge to everyone. Just give me any statement and I'll show you how I twist and turn it, and it would make sense in one way as well. One way or another, it would make sense. Science is different. Mathematics is one thing that is different, that is very hard to interpret it differently. But when we translate it linguistically, it can it can be misinterpreted purposefully. So that's why it's important for us to understand what the original person was trying to say. If I said that evil human beings should be punished, like, I mean, anyone who knows who Harris is, or if they've listened to me for a few hours or read my book or something, they would know who would Harris define as evil. But a religious person down the track can say, aha, Harris agrees with me that evil people should be punished. But Harris doesn't find homosexuals evil. Harris doesn't find the atheist evil, but a religious person might find those evil. So he could easily misinterpret my statement and go with it, and probably 100 years from today, something else would come out of that.
Yes, very possible. By the way, the person that we have been talking about most when it came to your book was who?
Richard Dawkins.
No, the one who influenced you.
Oh, in this? Oh, to write the book?
No, you said that you had lots of discussions on the book, and who influenced you most.
No, not on the book though. I spoke with. Hopefully, I'll be able to share some good news, very positive news, positive outcome of that very quickly, very soon. I spoke with a celebrity in Pakistan, and like
no. Sorry, I got off the wrong track, because you said that you had long discussions, who gave you a lot of insight into this, and this was Hassan. Because Hassan just joined us on the chat, so say hi.
Oh, all right. No. Oh, yes. Has he? Okay. No, I said, oh, Hassan. Hi, Hass. How are you? I think I told Hassan that he did influence me in going a little bit soft on the fact that my hardcore view that ISIS is the real Islam. Hassan influenced me in somehow thinking that might not be 100% true, because you can, as I gave you an example, you can actually misquote, misinterpret, genuinely misinterpret anything. So when a Muslim does look into those 100 hell-going verses, and I think that might not go too well with Hassan, then there are genuine people who believe, who can believe that atheists are not going to. This is not for atheists. They have their own rationale behind it. So ISIS will never agree with that. ISIS will behead me the first moment they get, or probably burn me alive. So to say that ISIS is the only form of Islam, or is the real Islam, everyone is stupid and wrong. I think that's just. I got that from Hassan, and Hassan actually influenced my my way of thinking.
Well, yeah, I call him the voice of reason. Whenever he came to the park, for example, in Speaker's Corner and things like that, it was always a pleasure. He's now appeared on the chat. Beach just had an orgasm, and Hassan says to you, "Please return to Islam."
Yeah, I know. I read that.
Okay.
I think I've predicted Hassan. I've predicted. Well, I think I'm going to have a conversation with Hassan at some point. Hassan's biggest problem has been the concept of hell, but I was very intrigued by this other school of thought from moderate Muslim. Again, it doesn't make sense to me, but it could make sense to some people, that there's no hell. It's just no, there is hell, but it's not for atheists. It's not for good people. It's actually for horrible people. Even though there are verses that say that good people will go to hell as well, because
that's nice.
But they say, well, no, hang on. It's not for the good people. It's for the bad good people who are bad. So you can misinterpret. You can twist and turn anything you want. But as I said, I'm not as interested in telling those people that they're stupid or they're wrong. I'm more interested in what I can get out of them in terms of improving the society, and hopefully I'll be able to share some very good news sooner than later about some people who are locked up in Pakistan, for instance. Let's just say that.
Oh, brilliant! Oh, that would be really nice, because I know that you're active there, and it's very okay. I'm going to get. Let me just go to the question, because let me take the last question first, because this is, of course, how can we support ex-Muslims, or what kind? Oops. He just disappeared. Okay, yeah, he's back. How can ex-Muslims, no, sorry, how can we non-Muslims support ex-Muslims? Is there anything that we can do other than just not scream at people the way that I'm doing it? You're muted, sorry. I've set this up that everybody who joins is muted.
Okay. No, I think it's I think moral support is important. I think the idea, or I'm thinking more about, instead of acting like a negative force, we have to add something in the ecosystem. And other ideas like humanism, secularism, they are more appealing than just being anti-Islam or anti-anything. That's just negating something. So I'm just thinking that we obviously have to have the discussion, because we don't believe, and that's the whole point of it. What is the point of creating an environment for discussion but then not have a discussion? So we have to have people who are criticizing Islam and the bad ideas, whether it's Islam or any other thing. But in order to attract more people, which I've noticed is a lot more powerful if we actually spread an alternative idea like secularism or humanism. So when we understand humanism, however back you want to start from, and then you can go to more contemporary philosophers. When we understand more into it, then it almost becomes unacceptable for you to amputate someone's hand or stone someone for what they do in private with their own private body parts. So then that has an indirect effect on religion itself. So without me having to shit on specifically on Islam, that can have the same impact. But having said that, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't criticize Islam. I think you should go on. So you, as a non-Muslim, should, I think, just keep supporting ex-Muslims, any shape or form you can do, and obviously have a discussion with them as well, in a way that I see a lot of ex-Muslims that are actually angry. I mean, that they're angry in a sense. Like, I was attacked a lot by ex-Muslims for giving, for not going hard on this Pakistani celebrity that I spoke with. For some reason, as I said, like, I had lost energy to tell him that he's an idiot. And the way he looks at it, I just didn't have the energy. I was more interested in what was coming out of that. And I think that's what you should be looking at it too, that what is going to come out of that? Is it going to be a better environment, better, more evolved, more humane, more secular society? Or are we just going to have this confrontation mode where we just keep saying to each other, you're stupid, no, you're stupid?
Just shaking them. Okay, but it's important to hear that it's not one particular topic. It's the overall thing. You need to be ready for a variety of topics and just show reality and compare it to what their claim is. I think that's the best one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. And look, everything else evolves from it. So, for example, there's a feminist movement taking control in Pakistan, and now the large corporations are getting into it as well. There was a billboard made, and it was taken down after a week, where it said that women should stay at home, and the company was a washing powder detergent, and it said that this washing powder can erase that kind of dirty thought as well.
Oh shit!
so that triggered a lot of hardcore Muslims, and they said, "Well, fuck you. How can you say that? I mean, our Islam orders women to stay at home, even though, there's so many other interpretations. Even you would agree on that too, because there were some people in Muhammad's time as well who did work, but most of them stayed at home, etc." But that was so confrontational, and and it was eventually taken down. But the debate started. There were women coming in, and Muslim women coming in. Well, no, what's wrong with that? I work. I go to work. I'm fine. And those people who think that. So those things can come out of it. These kind of discussions, and I think there is an explosion of free thinking, critical thinking, or breaking taboos, whether they directly originate from Islam or indirectly originate from Islam. I mean, honor culture is another one. I mean, there's no honor killing in Islam, so to speak, by the family. Yes, there's stoning, but that's through hadith. there's one verse where it says that adulteress should be locked up inside a house, and then that got changed to, okay, then 180 lashes or something like that. But the different types of honor culture, but honor culture comes from that kind of a mentality that that it's a patriarchal society and men are in charge. The Qur'an actually literally says that men are in charge. So that kind of thinking come up, but we have seen the potential in Muslims, great potential in Muslims, to ignore certain crucial bits of Quran and go with their own worldview, which is constantly evolving. So so this is why I keep saying that we need to find allies in the Muslim world and moderate Muslim voices, and they will do our work. They will do our work, and celebrities play a huge part.
So it's just chipping away and maintaining, chipping all the time.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to give you some questions from the chat.
Okay.
One thing was, what about people keeping a mild version, and because the worst is still there, it is always a threat, people will follow the worst?
So sorry, I didn't understand that. Sorry, say it again.
What about people keeping a mild version, and because the worst is still there, there's always this threat? In other words, if you have a mild version, which gives you a moderate Muslim, but because the negative things in Islam still exist, they haven't gone away. It's just because you are ignoring it, or you've managed to interpret them in a different way, they are still there. Isn't there always a threat that people will go back and follow the worst of the not so good parts if somebody else influences them?
Yeah, look, as I said, I mean, I would say there are bad ideas in everything lingering. You know, Nazism, there's still people who call themselves Nazis. The white supremacy is still there. That can always come back, where most people don't. The Hindu, there is Hindu extremism rising. I mean, the Hindu extremism is rising in India, especially when Hinduism itself doesn't have any goals of conquest or converting people to Hinduism, etc. But that is rising as a reaction. I'll give you that. But there's always room for violent ideologies to come back or return, and so does Islam. There would always be a risk, but again, that's where we have to have faith in humanity. I mean, secularism eventually flourished in the Western world. Some people fear that might go away because Islam is making a comeback, but that's why I think we need to reach out to those Muslims. And I still believe that moderate Muslim is a step towards atheism, because my parents' Islam was very different from moderate Islam of my parents was very different from moderate Islam of today's parents, and then their children will have either even less of an Islam or totally gone. So we have to have faith in humanity a little bit more, because we don't know what other ideas in the scientific world, new ideas are going to come forward. I'll give you an example. What would happen when we come up with synthetic meat, for instance? The day synthetic meat is produced on industrial scale, our insistence to kill animals for energy source will be gone. Who will be the last people still insisting on torturing animals? It will be Muslims, because they would.
We had this very topic a couple of shows ago.
Right. So we'll have Muslims who would argue, and I've been saying that for a while. I don't know if somebody heard it from me, but we'll have Muslims who will insist on it. But then within the Muslim world, they will say, well, the whole purpose of slicing the neck of an animal is so you drain the blood out of it. But if you grow meat in lab, there's no blood to begin with. So there's no need for halal. So then there will be another branching off within the Muslim society, and then if you look back 100 years before today, then they would say, well, in Harris Sultan's time, people were still worried about going back to harsher form of Islam, bringing back slavery or amputation of hands. But today we're just debating whether we should kill an animal or not. And we have a lot of moderate Muslims who say, yeah, it's okay not to kill an animal, just eat synthetic meat. So there will always be a natural evolution of ideas. Yes, it does sometimes dip down. For example, in the cases of Iranian revolution and We had a mini Islamic revolution in Pakistan in the 80s, but that's going away as well. So there will always be a general evolution towards modernity, and entire human history is evidence of that. So sorry, I dragged it a little bit. So no, so you can say that about everything, that there will be moderate Muslims who will always have a risk of going back. I think on a grander scheme of things, that fear might not be as valid as you might think.
Okay, just why so religious in the chat? We've covered most of the questions that you're asking away. The funny thing is, a moderate Muslim, there is no definition of a moderate Muslim. Okay, there is no thing where you can say a moderate Muslim is somebody who interprets sentence number this in the Quran in this way. No, there is no fixed definition for that word. It is just somebody who does not follow the violent, who does not follow the fundamentalist, who does not follow the Sharia above all else kind of attitude. That is what I would call a moderate Muslim, somebody who does not impact anybody else in their belief. They will believe in the afterlife, they will believe in what they are doing is good for them, they will believe that their own way of doing things is good, and they are not going to harm anybody else. That is my definition of moderate, and anybody else can have different interpretations or versions or definitions of a moderate Muslim, but this is my personal one. Okay, so there is no dictionary one.
I agree with you with pretty much all the criteria. I could add a little bit more into it. But how are you going to convince a Muslim who has somehow created a rationale that there is no hell? There is no hell either. Everyone is going to go to heaven, and some Jews believe that. And a lot of Jews don't believe that either. So, I mean, how are we going to convince that, okay, you are not a moderate Muslim? He would say, well, I'm not even a moderate Muslim, I'm a hardcore Muslim, because that was the genuine message of Islam. So he's created so many rationales in his mind that he's created his own entire Islam. And to him, that is the real Islam. He's not even looking at it moderate Islam. Moderate Muslims hate to be called moderate Muslims. They like to be called, we are the real Muslims. We are the hardcore Muslims. And you know, they're Muslims who even drink alcohol, and they think that no, it was fine at one stage. And you can, as I said, you could twist and turn it any way you want, and you can still be a Muslim. I can't come up with a definition for a Muslim. I used to think that,
but this is his point, and he's right. It's a useless word. You need to explain it each and every time. You need to sort of outline what it is that you're talking about. You need to talk about it before you can use it. Absolutely correct.
I agree with you. It's a useless word for a Muslim, moderate Muslim himself, but we have to categorize somewhere, because we have a certain interpretation of Islam. I mean, to me, heaven, according to Islamic doctrine, heaven and hell exist. You and I will burn in there forever. Our skins will regrow. You and I believe that, and ISIS believes that too. So they are the literal hardcore Islamists. But then you and I will. Then you and I will run into some Muslim who doesn't believe in any of that. It's just got his own worldview. To you and I, he's a moderate Muslim, or you can say even watered down Muslim. But you and I can even say he's not even a Muslim at all, because he doesn't agree in heaven and hell, which is,
exactly.
One of the articles. So, but we have to classify at some point. So I don't know. Should we just call them Muslim? What should we do?
So why support moderate Muslim? That's very easy, because we don't attack. Okay, what we do is we criticize the bad ideas in Islam. With a moderate Muslim, the way that I have defined it, I don't have to worry about them. I don't need to go and argue with them about the bad ideas in Islam. They've already done that themselves. I don't need to go and convince them that men and women should have equal rights. I don't have to convince them that stoning is a bad idea, that slavery is a bad idea, that these things are bad ideas in Islam. I don't need to do that anymore. And if somebody wants to believe that there is a God to get them through the day, well, so be it. Why should I judge them on that?
And that's what I would say. But when someone does believe that stoning is a good idea, I think then it's my job to tell him that he's full of shit. It's a bad idea. And if he's getting it from Islam, it's I agree with you. There is room for that in Islamic thought. But that's why I think Islam is a bad idea. So I think that's why it's important. But the problem is, a moderate Muslim will come in your defense or advanced modern Muslim, instead of moderate, say modern Muslim, a modern Muslim will come out and say, Harris is right. There's no room for stoning. No, Harris is wrong about there's room for stoning in Islam. But I agree with Harris, there shouldn't be any stoning. So how am I going to spit on that person? I'm going to say, okay, well, I would you and I arrive at through a different road at the same conclusion.
Exactly.
I'll have you. I think Why So Religious is getting really worked up, and I really like his critical approach. But he said, why do you think who do you think invented moderate Muslim and Islamists? Muslim did so they can separate themselves. No, not necessarily. I don't know that. I would say I need to be able to identify between an ISIS Islamist or jihadi. I would call him a jihadi, and then I would need to identify a moderate Muslim down the road who says who just gives me hugs every day. So I would need to identify them, I think, but they would not like that identification. All the moderate Muslims I've spoken to, they said no, they're not moderate. They're firmly 100% believe in the real Islam. The real Islam is obviously subjective.
Whatever, yeah. Okay, I've got another question. How do you find a meaning in life without religion, and how to avoid pitfalls of decadence and nihilism?
Yeah. Nihilism, yes. Nihilism is the funny one. I would ask everyone to watch my best video on that. I've made a really good video on that, about the purpose or meaning of life. I think meaning of life, the best I can articulate is that the universe doesn't care whether we have a meaning or not. I don't care, and I can sleep just as fine knowing that once I die, that's the end of it. Just like how it was before I was born. Hitler was doing everything, Stalin was doing everything. Millions of people, billions of people had been brutally murdered, and it had absolutely no impact on my life. Now, while I'm alive, I have feelings, I have emotions. I don't want bad things to happen. And once I'm dead, no matter what I do, no matter how good or bad I've done, it's over, it's finished. So during that lifetime, 70, 60, 70 years or whatever it is, I can choose to do whatever I want to do with my life. I can help out people. I can shit on people. I can make great advancements in science, or I can do whatever they want. But the people who can't get past this idea, my question to them is, if you need a meaning of life, and your meaning is that there will be an afterlife, and this is some sort of a test, then what would be your meaning of life in the afterlife? Because then there's going to be no afterlife. So that life proves to you that you don't need any afterlife for a meaning. You can live your life without any afterlife, or without any meaning as well. Sure, you can give yourself any meaning you want, but it's all subjective, and you can do it yourself. So and there's no decadence, and there's no nihilism in there for me.
Yeah, and then I think you can turn it around, and you can easily say, well, with religion, you must be a hypocrite. You must be deceiving yourself in some way, because if you take a meaning of life, if you take the meaning of Islam, that you are created to be worshipping this creator God that has created you. Why would you worship this creator when it says this creator doesn't need any worship? And it doesn't tell you how to worship. There is nothing in the Quran that tells you how this worship or what this worship should look like. And then, of course, why would you worship to get double whatever bonus points or whatever for your afterlife when this God already knows, this creator God knows already what you're going to do at the end of the day after your 70 years. So the whole thing logically does not make any sense. So you need to fool yourself into believing, and this is where this word delusion comes from. You had to fool yourself to believe this to make any sense of the reason for a meaning of life within religion. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, the meaning of life, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I'm not some brilliant individual. I look at my life and I say, well, if I can think that, surely you can do it too. I have absolutely. People ask me all the time, Harris, isn't that depressing that we're just alone in this entire universe? We're just going to die. I say, I really don't care. I'm mostly worried about which movie I'm going to watch tonight or what book I'm going to read. And I'm fine, and I'm watching music, and I have absolutely no worry about it, unless obviously some other things happen. My dog dies, or something bad happens, I'll be worried about that. But that I understand that's just only, and once I die, it's over, game over. Why do you have to give yourself so much importance that, you know, you are the center of the universe? That no, I can't die. I'm some sort of an energy that has to somehow live on. I had
and quite the opposite. It's liberating.
Yeah, I think it's, and it makes you humble. Where's the humility gone
exactly.
of all the people who say that we are humble? Fine, you can die. There's nothing special about you.
And first of all, it gives you a sense of reality, because if you're a God believer, then this planet was built for you. You don't need to watch out for it. But in reality, we are killing this planet. I cannot go and say, well, I don't need to worry about it. Some God's going to do this. No, I need to do this myself. My hands are not clasped in prayer. My head is not banging on the floor. My hands are ready to work to do something about this.
Imagine if a moon-sized object, we see it coming towards the Earth, and we know that it's going to obliterate everything on Earth there ever was. It's going to turn it into a molten rock. I would love to see the faces of those people who would just jump into prayer. You know, what's the fucking point of that? You're just thinking that is, unless at that point it would be a pretty good point for your God to prove himself and show this hand comes out of space and just moves that approaching object away, and then go, okay, then I'll say, okay, all right, Superman came at the last minute and helped us.
No, you got it wrong. This is the verification of the end times.
Yeah, so there you go. So they will have a reason for that too, and exactly. They will die. They will die deluding. I think Christopher Hitchens said that. He said that I just, you know, I would pay anything, but I just can't see at that moment when these believers die, and after they die, I want to see the look on their face that, oh fuck, it was all bullshit. But I said, unfortunately, because they're dead, they won't be able to think that. So.
Okay. We've talked about the definition of a moderate Muslim. What is the opposite? What's an extremist?
ISIS, Taliban, people who literally shape their lives around the literal reading of the Qur'an, and they just don't stop at Qur'an, because Qur'an becomes pretty difficult to understand without the literature that comes with it, and that literature is even more explicitly violence than the Qur'an itself. Cutting off the hands. The one who says, okay, well, he's an enemy of Allah, I'm going to cut off his hands and feet, and I'm going to wage jihad against the non-believers, and I'm going to spread the faith of Allah, and the real manifestation of that. This is why I think people like us, when we used to say there's some truth in that ISIS is the real Islam, but I think the proper statement would be ISIS is the literal version of Islam, because every verse, as I said, give me any statement, I can misinterpret it purposefully, and then purposefully, genuinely believe that my interpretation is actually the correct interpretation. So that would be the literal extremist version.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I think extremist should not be the right word. It should be the literal version, because
fundamentalists.
Yeah, no, even fundamentalists, because how would you convince a what we classify as moderate Muslim or modern Muslim who looks at the same verses and he's deluded enough and he thinks, well, this is not what God meant by that. I'm a fundamentalist. My fundamentals of Islam is prayer and fasting and being nice to everyone. He genuinely believes that he's the fundamentalist Muslim, and those are the fundamentals of Islam. So I think literal would be probably the best version, and that in manifestation, its manifestation would be ISIS, and it seemed extremist to us, but that's just one literal interpretation.
What about these fools that you see on these dawah things, like this Ali Dawah and Hijab and Adnan Rashid and Subur and all these fools? Where do they belong?
They're literalists too. Again, the only difference between them and ISIS is that they're actually not doing it, but they believe in pretty much every same thing. They believe in the literal jinns and the miracles, and they literally believe that homosexuality is horrible and it should be punished to eradicate, but they would not actively do it. But ISIS will do it, and this is why in UK you guys have let in all the all these ISIS warriors in your country, and I worry about it. That where is it going to go with that? Because that thought is still there. It's are they going to live like Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawah, where they would just say it, where they believe in it? Then it's a ticking time bomb. Because if you sit on that, if you sit on those beliefs, I think it's only rational for you to act upon it. So these are literalists. I would say these are literalists, and in our, because of our linguistic, Muslims would like to call it. Yeah, I think Why So Religious was right, and that a Muslim would like to call them extremist, but it shouldn't be the right word, because extreme. If you believe that Islam is a religion of peace, then extremists would be extremely peaceful, right? But that's not what we. Yeah, but they're going against it. That's not what these are extremists. So these are literalists and probably more rational Muslims, I would say, because they're drawing a direct line from the scripture to violence.
Given the anti-democratic tendencies of Islamicists, how supporters of such offer objective evidence against Sam Harris on the issue of voting? What? TDS, can you repeat this? Or did you ask, can you understand this? Can you ask him, given the anti-democratic tendencies of Islamicists, how supporters of such offer objective evidence against Sam Harris on the issue of voting?
Oh yeah, okay. Okay. See, again, another thing, like, I mean, these modern Muslims have somehow convinced themselves that Islam has room for democracy as well. They believe the first caliph, Abu Bakr, was democratically elected between the four caliphs. One of them didn't approve of him. The other three approved of him, Ali and Omar. Sorry, Omar and Uthman. So that's where they draw the narrative from. Obviously, there's a different democracy. You and I, how we see it, is totally different, and I don't even buy it. It could not even be true for all I know. But my point is that they draw that narrative. But for example, Pakistan, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Turkey, these countries have a Western democratic system where people, one man, one woman equal one vote, sort of thing. So they do have an opportunity to vote. These Islamist parties do take part in the election process. So they actually have an opportunity, a legitimate opportunity, to vote for these extremist parties or these Islamist parties, but they don't. I don't understand. Can anyone solve that for me? They just don't. We look at all the demographics. Indonesia, I think they did one in Aceh province. I'm not very familiar with Indonesia, but all these other Islamic in Turkey just happened, in Ankara and Istanbul. This guy Erdogan, who seems like an Islamist, but obviously nothing like ISIS or Taliban, but he has Islamist tendencies. He just lost as well. So in those two cities, so they have an opportunity. So when people see that, oh, they're going to bring beheading, they're going to bring stoning. Maybe I don't want that, even though I say that I want that. This is a mental conflict going on in their own minds. And I think this is why I think that is probably not a true reflection.
Do you also see this shift from Wahhabi Saudi to the Turkish kind of influence?
I think the Wahhabism has run its course in a way that even Saudis have recognized that they're not going as hardcore as they used to 10 years ago. 15 years ago, because America really tightened the screws. They're just having these dying breaths. I know in the Pakistani madrasa system, a lot of reforms are taking place without going so public about it, because that is going to bring out the extremists, these jihadis, more in force. But I've been given examples where they are bit by bit changing the wordings, changing the text, the textbooks, where they're just changing, eliminating the jihadi verses, etc. And again, it's easy to misinterpret them, and they're interpreting in their own way. So they are doing these things. So the so-called moderate or modern Islam is somehow there's the first time I'm seeing that there's a genuine attempt from the Muslim governments around the world, there's a genuine attempt to try to move away from this Wahhabism. And obviously, Saudi Arabia always had to play a part because they've got the money and they had the purpose behind it. But with this new guy, MBS, he might be corrupt and brutal, but he might have recognized that, we have to move a little bit forward away from this Wahhabi Islam.
Okay. Okay, the Islamists, until they get voted, are the Islamists after they change the law, or do we need a new word for? Oh my God! So the people are coming back from ISIS, and there's two questions around this. One is, are the Islamists after they change? Are they Islamists after they change the laws, or do we need a new word for them also? And the other one is from TDS, was also an extension. The claim was the extremists don't vote for the extreme given hidden voting. You can't have evidence those who would vote for them chose to vote at all. So this is all about the extreme. Oh, you dropped off here. I need to. Did you get the question?
No, I think I cut off right in the middle. So
okay, so it's about the Islamists and the extremists. When they are they Islamists when they change the laws, or do we need a new word for them as well? And then the other one was an extension by TDS, the claim that the extremists don't vote for the extreme given hidden voting. You can't have evidence those who would vote for them chose to vote at all.
Yeah, well, okay, so the second part, I'll answer that very easily, but you can't say it otherwise either. Where's the data? I'd like to see the data. Okay. The first part was more important. I think, no, the original terms are good. Jihadi, Islamist, moderate, and secular. So jihadi is the one that he actually holds the sword in his hand, the ISIS foot soldiers and the ISIS leadership. Islamists are the people who are under their influence, who might have come back to England now. So they still hold those. If they hold those views, they are still Islamist, because Islamist is someone who believes in spreading Islam, the ideology of Islam, the way he sees it. And obviously, if a modern Muslim who doesn't believe in any bad thing of Islam, he could be an Islamist in his own mind as well, because the Muslims have this bug of spreading their idea. So they might call themselves an Islamist as well, because to them Islam is good. Islam is Western secularism. Let's just say that. But the one we are concerned about is the ISIS Islamist, or sorry, Muslim Brotherhood Islamist, those kind of Islamists, or even Ali Dawa, or these guys are Islamists. They believe in the supremacy of Islamic way of life, Islamic jurisprudence on everyone else. Anjem Choudhury is another one. Even though, given the opportunity, if he was brave enough, for example, Anjem Choudhury, he would have held a Kalashnikov in his hand, but he was a coward, so he wouldn't do it. He would mislead other people. He would mislead young people to do his dirty work. So until he holds the gun in his hand, I would call him Islamist.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think, geez, we've been going on for over 2 hours. I could chat for you forever. What question have I not asked that you would have liked to have been asked, and the way you would have a brilliant answer?
No, I don't know. I can't think of anything. I think we've covered pretty much most of it. As I said, like, I mean, our thoughts are always evolving, and my view of ISIS as a real Islam has modified a little bit. I don't think that ISIS is not the Islam. That's the crucial part. ISIS is a version of Islam. So I think that's very important, and credit goes to Hassan Radwan for making me think it that way. Because and the other thing is, again, as I said, I just want to reiterate that I'm thinking that we need to make more allies. This total antagonistic approach may not work, or at least it's not going to work for me. I look at people if there are 4 million atheists in Pakistan, that they are awfully quiet, because I see only a few thousands under fake IDs, and I'm more interested in bringing them out. This is like an army, huge market waiting for you to be tapped, and then they can spread it. It's like the idea is awesome. Ideas spread like memes, they just spread. And so I think we need to look into other avenues. Again, I'm not shitting on other ideas either. You want to have an antagonistic or more aggressive approach towards criticizing religion. Go for it. I will support you. But I'm just saying that my way of thinking has changed a little bit. And also, I want to make an announcement. I am coming to Europe in September.
Oh, brilliant.
Yes, I am delivering a talk in Amsterdam on 1st of September, then in Berlin, a couple of talks in Berlin, I think that's on 6th of September, and then in Oslo, that's 9th of September. So the details, ticketing details will be available on my Facebook profile. You can have a look there. So yeah, I mean, I would love for you guys to come and take part, and we can hopefully share and exchange ideas.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Everybody follow Harris Sultan on Facebook, and you will get all the details there. We just say thank you. I think I've made it very clear that I enjoyed very much reading your book and going through it. And I think it's a very level-headed approach that you are doing there, and presenting exactly what people should see in Islam, not being antagonistic, not being overly aggressive or anything like that. And that's why I appreciate it. And that's why I personally am looking forward to the second delivery of what you have to offer for us. Thank you very much for being on the Jinn and Tonic show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Thank you. See you next time. See you next time on the Jinn and Tonic show. Cheers. Bye-bye.